schools. Thank you all for coming. We're going to kick straight into it, and mākua no te karakia mo tātou o tēnei rā. No reira, me inoi tātou. Thank you, Fee. Ngā mihi o te rā ki te whānau hui hui nei, kia tau te rangi Māori e, kia whakatapua tātou me ngā mea e whakapono ana tātou. Haumi e, hui e, tāe ki e. Greetings of the day to the whānau gathered here. Let peace be with us, and may we respect each other in what we believe. Bind together, gather together, united. Kia ora. And ko te whakatauki, kua kōwhiri tēnei rā, I orea te tuatara ka patu ki waho. A problem is solved by continuing to find solutions. And below there is what it refers to, the need for creative thinking, adaptability and perseverance. In order to solve a problem, you need to have all of these. We thought that was relevant for today. A few housekeeping for us today. There we go, mute and less sharing. We're recording these sessions and we will share that out with you at a later date. Add any gems and pātai throughout the kōrero to the chat, and we'll hope to respond to them at our next session or during the wā pātai. Can we just be mindful that this is a safe space, and the confidentiality we felt was really important because they are our rural schools, and yeah, we just want to maintain that integrity for both them and us in this space. No reira, let's connect, inspire and uplift each other. Kia ora, everyone. Apologies for my little coughing. I've got this flu that's just come on. So no reira, we're all going to introduce ourselves, starting with me. Ko Deb Hack, tōku ingoa, he uri ahau no te Tai Tokerau, Cluster 1. Susan Arrowsmith is our cluster manager, and I'm in the team, and we service all the kura kaupapa Māori and kura iwi spaces in te Tai Tokerau. Tēnā koutou katoa.
Kia ora, I'll jump in. Ko Fiona Harkness ahau. I'm a practice lead in the Tai Tokerau South RTLB cluster. And for me, the interest in rural schools, I've been in an RTLB for 20 years. And on my first before the transformation, all of my schools were little isolated rural communities, and I was very aware of the pressures on those small communities. And there's been some really interesting things occurring over the time, and we just really felt that it sits in its own space, supporting in rural schools. So Anna, we really want to welcome our Anna to the team. She's one of our new members of the RTLB Aotearoa. I'm really happy to have her on board.
Thanks, Fee. Tēnā koutou katoa. Ko Anna Ladbrook tuku ingoa no te ano ahau. So I am part of Murihuki Cluster 40, based in rural northern Southland. I'm I'm the only person in our cluster that actually doesn't have any office buddies or colleagues, so that's a unique part of my rural school journey. It's not unusual for me to be doing between about 600 and 800k a week around northern Southland. It gets up to about 1,000 towards the end of term 3 when everybody wants everything. I guess I'm feeling really privileged to be here today and to be able to see the parts of northern Southland that I do and work with our rural schools. So looking forward to the discussion from today.
And kia ora, everybody. I'm Leonie Fulburn, practice leader in Cluster 17. I just saw Brent's little comment in the chat. It distracted me. Anyway, so we've got 61 schools and 15 RTLB. We cover a huge area, like most of you who are here today. Loads and loads of rural schools. So probably nearly 2/3 of our cluster is rural schools. So for me, I went to rural schools for my schooling, and when I was teaching, I taught for 25 years in a semi-rural school. And in that time, obviously, there was an amazing amount that we could celebrate, but also there were challenges, barriers, around isolation and access. So my passion is in the rural school space. So our agenda for today, why this rōpū, and we're going to talk about that very soon. We're going to look at the feedback that you gave us from the registration questions and just look at some of the key themes. And then we're going to have our guest speaker, Carol Ashton, talking about working with rural schools, a strategic approach. We'll have time for pātai after Carol's presentation, but if you want to put your questions or comments in the chat throughout, that's fine too. And then we'll talk about our next steps moving forward with this rōpū. So what's our why? I want to just give you a little bit of a background first. So rural schools is a next focus. So the funding kind of says there has to be a focus on rural schools. But besides that, and more importantly, we in the PLN are passionate about our mahi in rural schools. And you're here today, so we're guessing that you are too. So this mahi started with a conversation nearly a year ago, and then we talked about a survey, created a survey, and then sort of said, no, survey's not the way. We'll do a spotlight session. So in between times, some of us had been to the TDA summit and listened to some of the other next groups talking about their mahi in rural schools, which kind of got us excited. So we got a slideshow ready for a spotlight session, and then as we were talking our way through things, we realised actually this is not just a spotlight session. This is really important mahi that deserves more than just a one-off session. So we're passionate about this important rural schools mahi. So we want to provide a space for you to collaborate with others, share your ideas and perspectives, explore strengths, challenges and solutions. And who knows, maybe one of you will be a guest presenter on a future webinar. So we want this work to continue into the future. So because of that, we're encouraging you to join the Rural Schools group on our website. It currently has 9 members. Hopefully after today, it'll have a few more. So we just want to say thank you very much for joining us today for this first of hopefully many webinars. So like I mentioned, we asked you some questions in the registration process, and here's what you had to say. Over to you, Deb.
And thank you, Leonie. That's awesome. Yeah, we're really excited actually, and thank you everybody for your amazing responses as well. It's kind of and it was an indication of just how important this mahi was. So I'm just going to read back through. We've identified 6 key themes that came out of the feedback, and with a little description that we've added there just in relation to those. You'll notice that I'm going to go over, sort of shift around. It's not necessarily in order, but that's okay. Ka pai. So effective communication and responsiveness. There was a strong message there that staff feel the communication is a key strength. Schools are described as responsive, with staff feeling comfortable about contacting support personnel when they need to solve a problem or have any conversations really. And so it highlighted the strong relationships built within the community that facilitate this open communication. So that was really awesome. Collaborative working models. The responses point to a successful collaborative approach. The mahi-tahi model, working together, is specifically mentioned, highlighting the benefit of working with various support staff, including teaching principals, learning support coordinators, and ministry staff. There is a strong sense of collegiality and being valued as a part of the team. Our role is dedicated liaison and support roles. The value of RTLB and other liaison roles is consistently highlighted throughout your responses. What works well is having people in these roles who understand the unique context of rural schools, have dedicated time for the liaison work, and are seen as a valued source of support. I seem to have lost my... Okay, providing practical support. Let's see, just one moment. Just grabbing my other notes. in this part here, it's that the responses showed and indicated that the schools are really grateful for the support that they do receive, and the varied information that's shared and ongoingly. So that was another point there. Being flexible. The dynamics within the rural space, it showed that we needed to be flexible, and you can probably all have many examples of this, where you might, it's often important to give a phone call ahead just to make sure, because of the distance like Anna spoke about. Sometimes, you know, you just need to do that. It becomes habit. You check in to make sure that somebody's actually going to be on site. And so, you know, just the need for us to be a lot more flexible was another theme that was there as an example. And finally, the strong relationships and community. This one, we're going through one at the moment where this is the most frequently mentioned strength. The responses highlight the importance of building strong, trusting relationships with staff, students, and whānau. Rural schools are often described as having a close-knit community where it is easy to get to know everyone really quickly, and that concept of whanaungatanga is seen as a key strength. Now, I'm just going to talk briefly. We have a passing here in the community at the moment in our rural space, and this particular member of the community he's the bus driver, and he also has multi-talented as they are. He also drives the boat that takes everybody across to the sand dunes, and so he plays a really big part of the community. And yesterday, as I observed the students coming through, students, staff, and family all combined together, it just highlighted that you know, how do we check in? Our schools come down, we bring our tamariki down to pay our respects, and then often we go back to school following that event, and then kind of business as usual. But are we being mindful about how we check in with each other, and just to make sure that everybody is, you know, in there, say, in that rongomatane space? I'm using that reference to mana potential because I know that one, but in that maurito space, how do we make sure that everybody is feeling that maurito again as we enter back into the school and what we're supposed to do? Because it's not only us as the kaiako or the support staff, but in the tamariki and the wider whānau, particularly in this example where, you know, he's that consistent person. We talk about building that relationship with whānau and kaiako, about consistency, and definitely this person demonstrates that, you know, picking the tamariki up every day. You're more than the bus driver, and that level of respect was also demonstrated yesterday in the type of relationship. You're more like an uncle or an auntie in those roles, when they don't have very many people that model that sort of the positive behaviours that we're looking for: consistency, showing up every day with a smile on your face, and being able to give a growling and not be disrespected for that in tamariki, you know. So there was lovely stories shared, but yeah, I just thought I'd mention that one in terms of the strong relationships. Everybody is affected, including the storekeepers and everybody these are key people that play a role in keeping things turning within the community, and somebody that you can rely on. So yeah, I just thought I'd share those ones. But thank you so much for your responses, and those were the positive things about what is working well. And so I thought that was really great. So yeah, thank you everyone, and that sort of sums me up.
Right, well, I guess that's on to me, Deb. First, before I begin, thank you very much for sharing of what's going on in your community, and all of us who work in rural schools at the moment feel for what you're all going through. So sending you all our aroha at the moment. Looking at engaging with rural schools, and this follows on from what Deb was saying, is how we engage with our rural schools. And your responses are really interesting. The first thing that came up was about regular visits and how they kind of look. For some of us, due to distance, it could be weekly, fortnightly, termly, or needs-based. but also the importance of being seen. We know that our rural schools operate really based on community, so turning up to matariki events, calf club performances can have just as much impact. Looking at multiple communication channels, so face-to-face where possible. Sometimes we're the only external supports our schools see in a while. Otherwise, email, phone, or videos, or a combination. Again, flexibility came up. It was huge. Adapting to school schedules and preferences, acknowledging challenges for rural staff, and teaching principles. And I think that's a real strength of RTLB, that we have the ability to be flexible. Relationship building, whanaungatanga came up, attending community events and formal catch-ups during breaks, and just being a listening ear, sometimes being that critical friend. Team approaches, so having a rural liaison supported by multiple RTLB, and integration with wider support, so including te maho and other professionals, and if you're lucky enough to have agencies that service your rural schools as well. Lots of opportunities for engagement there. It must be to Leonie, is it?
Sure is. So I guess none of this will come as a surprise to those of you who are here today. There can be significant challenges and barriers in working with our rural schools. Things like the time and staffing constraints. Often we have teaching principals, teachers are time poor, there's a high turnover of young teachers, that kind of thing. The geographical and logistical barriers, things like distance and travel time. And I know that some of us travel huge distances.
Dan, you please come to the office quickly. Thank you.
Sorry about that little interlude. So weather events and things like that can also be a barrier to us accessing, and them and schools accessing as well. So external supports can be problematic in terms of getting the support in your school. So, you know, the lack of access, the agency unavailability, shortage of relievers, increased workload on existing supports, and of course the school specific dynamics. So some schools can be closed off to outside help. Sometimes there's a stressed staff member who has a disproportionate impact on the whole school, and smaller classes makes misbehaviour stand out more, with some of the feedback that you gave us. So thank you for that. And I think I am passing over to Fee.
Bye. Kia ora. Thank you so much. I'm really happy to be able to introduce our next guest, who was in the room when it happened. So Carol Ashton, in her previous role, she'll talk a little bit more about what she's been doing. In her previous role with Springboard, actually stood RTLB Aotearoa, or helped us to stand up. And so in those very early days, I was lucky enough to contract Springboard. We were lucky enough to contract Springboard to support us with our strategic plan. And I think that, you know, that where we are now is real testament to the support that they gave us in those early days to really shape our thinking. Carol was there when we did all of that work through to identifying our mission and our vision. And I think that stood the test of time too. I really value being able to work with Carol. I'm really lucky to have her now as part of the RTLB team. And prior to the Springboard piece, we got to work together, putting together the learning support delivery model for Tai Tōkiro. And that stood the test of time too. So absolutely value Carol in terms of her contribution. She's incredibly experienced in this space. And I'm really happy to now hand over to Carol. Thank you so much for your support.
Now I've just got to work the technology. Kia ora koutou. Ko parihaka tōku maunga, ko hātia tōku awa, ko aurora tōku waka, ko Tai Tōkiro tōku rohi, ko Ngāti Pakeha tōku iwi, ko Ashton tōku hapu, ko Hal Ashton tōku papa, ko Nolene Lowndes tōku whaia, ko Dee Mera tōku wahine, ko Akutama, ko Tim, Cam, me Maiki, ko Aku Tamariki Hikoi, ko Rebecca, Rupert, me Sam, ko Carol Ashton aho. It's really lovely to be here with you all today, and really, I'm really excited to be talking about rural schools because I've got a real passion for this area, for this part of work. I've experienced it in lots of levels. So I began my teaching in mid-sized rural schools in the far north, and after several years, we moved to a very isolated school inland from Whanganui, where I was the principal's wife, aka the reliever, aka the office lady, aka the shopping person, and the mother of 3 children attending the school. While I was there, I really experienced all the aspects that have come out of the survey, all the things the good things and the hard things, the lack of access, the isolation, but also the really amazing experience of being included in all aspects of a small community. My ex-husband used to have to go out possum shooting at night because that was one of the ways the school raised funds, is that they sold possum tails. And so, there were times that it was also the area babysitter so that people could go out possum shooting. Do you want to next slide? Thanks. When I left the ministry, I had the opportunity to work for 3 years for Springboard Trust, which is now Te Uru Amakura. And what I really learned in that time is that strategic planning is really just like CAP plans and IEPs. They're taking a planned approach to change, and they start with being able to. Sorry, I'm just going to change I didn't print my notes out, and I'm just going to talk. Yeah. And I'll go back. So I did 3 years with Springboard Trust as a program manager and then as a team lead, supporting cohorts of principals who were undertaking a strategic leadership for principals program. In 2020, it was identified that small rural schools were struggling to participate in the program because they couldn't get out of their schools. There wasn't enough relievers. At that time, the program was being run as 9 half-day workshops, 9 months of half-day workshops over the year, and it wasn't working for them at all. So we were charged with looking at the program and thinking, how can we adapt it to make it suitable for rural teaching principals? And one of the things that we did was sort of dig down into the data. Now, at that point, we were just looking at rural at teaching principals, and we found that 20% of principals around the country are teaching principals. They had some degree of teaching responsibility. So that's not counting all the principals in rural schools who add to all the other issues. So it was a big factor. The factors that we identified that made it challenging for them were the same as what we've identified today. But alongside that, there really came through a theme under the wellbeing of overload, of huge amounts of work responsibility, of issues around boundaries, and how people manage the fact that you were the principal in the community, or you were the teacher in the community, but you were also at the rugby club with people on Saturday night, and you also socialised with families that were part of the school, which also identified the issue that there was often a lack of safe collegial support to offload with or to problem solve with. There was lots of things, you were in the school I was at in Whanganui, we were 45 minutes from the nearest school, and there was one other teacher, but she was a member of the community and had been long term, and it was all our friends were parents in the school, so it was always tricky to be able to process some of that stuff and to think, that's something I need to take to somebody else, rather than reacting to it and carrying and so on. We also found, so anyway, out of that with Springboard Trust came the fact that we looked into what was going to work, and what we came up with was, instead of 9 half-day workshops, we had 6 full-day workshops, and they were 3 lots of 2 days with an overnight factor. One of the important things was we wanted people to be able to have fun. We wanted them to be in a confidential environment, and we wanted them to have a place to share common experience with peers, and shared problem solving. So that's really what came out of the Springboard Trust work. And then so we were looking at basically what is strategic planning with schools, and this is where I keep tying it back to CAP plans and IEPs, that you need to start with a really clear vision of what it is you're trying to achieve. And if you don't have that clarified at the beginning, it's really hard to know whether you're making progress in the right direction. Once you've got that clear vision, working backwards to translate it into goals and the steps you need to take to achieve them. In schools, it's really thinking about the changes you need to make. In business, it's about staying commercially viable, but in schools, it's about creating an inclusive and effective learning environment where all children will succeed. So I'll show you in a few minutes a few examples of plans that rural schools came up with. But having that clear vision about what it is that you want your kids to come out of your school with. So setting your direction, starting with your direction. Where do you want to go? What's your vision? And then really, really important, what would success look like if you achieve your vision? When Fiona was talking about working with the PLN, that was where we started from. We started with that question about, if this worked really well, in 3 years' time, if we were looking at this or going for more funding or whatever, what would we expect to have happened to be able to achieve this vision, to be considered successful? So what does success look like? What changes will need to happen to get there? And there's always lots of changes. But with bigger schools, we used to say come down to 3 high-level goals. With smaller schools, it would come down to 2 high-level goals, because with smaller schools, there's a lot less people to do the mahi. So thinking about that all the time is, what are the priority goals? And then once you've got the goals, then thinking about what are the initiatives that sit under those goals, what are the pieces of work that will take you in that direction, and then on an annual basis, what are the actions you're going to take to make it happen? And then when are you going to roll them out, and who will lead them? Can I have the next slide, please, Fiona? Oh, sorry, I've got mine out of order. Can you just go? I reordered mine. Okay, that's all right. We can run with that. We're nothing if not flexible. So questions for RTLB. Part A, to ask yourself, if you're working, how do you add value to a school's strategic plan? How do you align your work with what the school is trying to do? First thing is to know what their plan looks like. What is their vision, and what are their goals that they've set for themselves? And where do you fit within that? Where might you fit within that? So looking for places that you can contribute to directly to their success. At a tomato level, it might be planning your whole school work to support strategy and include everyone. So in your liaison role, you might be always thinking about, how's this going to give the school traction towards meeting their goal. And a lot of schools will have that word of inclusion in their plans, but have they really thought about what that looks like in their schools? At a te kahuri level, groups are identified as needing support to bring about the change. So this may be where you're thinking about your social skills groups or your literacy groups or whatever, but how are they going to contribute back to that success for the school? At Te Arotahi, it's integrating the values and the success factors into the programs and planning. For example, our school whānau have a strong sense of connection, pride and belonging, may be one of the success factors for a school. So aligning that, putting that into your CAP plans, those words directly from the school's values into your plans, so that people can see that this is a clear alignment, that everything that as you do, I've heard this mentioned several times around the isolation and the wellbeing factors, supporting the wider school community, turning up for things like Ag Day, also things like connecting school staff with others with similar needs. So on Monday, I had the real pleasure of taking a teacher aide who's just got limited authority to teach at a very isolated little school up here, to work with a very a very experienced and well-established junior class in a similar school. She had the most amazing day, and she just came back with pages and pages in her notebook of things that she wanted to focus on. It really lifted her morale and her sense. She could also see the things that she was doing well and the things that she needed to focus on. So that connecting people outside school with through your connections is really important. And along with that, helping the rural schools to access other specialist services. So knowing who else is out there and what they provide, and being able to talk about that, and maybe to do introductions to people, so that you cut down the amount of thinking and work that those rural staff have to do. You kind of shortcut it if possible. Okay, Fiona, let's see what slide comes up next. Okay, that's the one I thought I was talking to. So this is an example of a plan on a page. With Springboard, once they've got the whole plan in place, we asked people to do a plan on a page, which was like a communication document with that could be used to talk with parents, but anybody coming into school could see very clearly what the school's vision was for their learners. So Karamako School is a made-up school, so I'm not talking about anything confidential here. Their vision for it was based on the small country school I worked in, and the vision for their learners was learning for our futures, caring for our world, because these were children who lived on farms and had a very important waterway running through the community. So there was a lot of factors that we really wanted those kids to go away thinking about why it was so important to care for their world and what their role was in doing that. Under the vision at the top is a tagline: students will be supported and inspired to develop holistically, achieve academically, embrace diversity, and encourage sustainability. So that tagline you won't see under every vision, but quite often schools will have a tagline, which is really what they want specifically for their students. There are 2 strategic goals in this plan. First of all, designing a responsive Karamako school curriculum that engages and inspires all learners. And under that goal, 3 initiatives that we're going to come in: using teaching as inquiry to improve practice and literacy achievement, create a student-centered localised curriculum, and improve digital fluency. Second goal, I'm just looking at my timing and thinking we're getting shorter time, so I'll try and slow down and just cover main points. Second goal is around a positive learning environment that promotes innovation, inclusiveness, and sustainable practices. And at the end there, you've got your success factors. This is really important. What success will look like when you achieve these. And underpinning the whole lot is your values. Okay, next slide. This one is an example of a roadmap. So this is taking those initiatives for strategic goal 1 and looking at when you're going to roll them out over the 3 years. And this bit's really important, and particularly in rural schools where you've got so few people to do things, you really have to think about what those initiatives, what time those initiatives are going to take up, how much energy, and who's available to do that, to work on them with you. Otherwise, you end up with one person trying to manage far too much. So really breaking each of those initiatives down into stages and lining them up over 3 years. I have a feeling that maybe the ministry is going to a 4-year strategic plan now. It doesn't really matter how much, because each year you come back and look at it. Next page, Fiona. And this page here is an example of an annual plan broken down. Sorry, next one. I get it. Yeah, of the annual plan, which is taking that year 1 of the roadmap and breaking that down into actions that you're going to take, who's going to do them, what timing they're going to need, how much time they're going to need, how much cost they're going to need, and how you're going to know if you've implemented them successfully, what you're going to see. So again, really you can bring it back to CAP planning over and over again. It's about being really clear about what you're going to do, when you're going to do it, who's going to do it, and thinking about how much time and money it's going to cost. Okay, next one. Okay, and these are a couple of examples of strategic plans from rural schools. I've used older ones, but just because those were the ones I've still got copies of. And but you'll see in this first one that their vision was growing our future. At the bottom is their values, and that school has got the most beautiful tree in their grounds. It's got a huge old purity tree. So that tree was very much part of that school's identity. And 2 goals, 2 initiatives for each goals, and really clearly spelled out success factors. So 3 places that I could see in there immediately that RTLB could align their work with. Prioritising a sense of identity, manaakitanga, and a place of belonging for all tamariki staff and stakeholders. Implementing effective wellbeing practices to support the whole learner with a focus on social and emotional capabilities. And under success, our staff are empowered and motivated, providing strength-based teaching and learning programs. So I think all of you know, any of you looking at that could say, oh yeah, that's where this would sit. And that is how I could help the school to achieve what they want to achieve. Next one, Fee. This one, creating lifelong learners who care and have pride, and pride with their values of participation, respect, innovation, diligence, and empathy. So that sort of underpinned everything they were doing. But again, there's some quite specific places in that plan where you could see that your work you could position the work you're doing. Okay, getting on to the next one. So this is the important bit. At the moment, Fiona talked about the case study, and I said, oh, it's not really a case study, it's just a way of working. And this is a little rural school I work in that has been through the mill. They've had some really tough times over the last probably 10 years. But I've been sort of involved with them since 2022. So beginning of 2023. They were established in 1905, so they've got a long history. It's full primary. All tamariki attending at present can talk about their parents, grandparents, and great-grandparents attending the school. And the school was previously the centre for many community events. All tamariki at the moment are related to each other and can talk about how they are related to each other, and they're often related to the support staff too, because the support staff are the local employments. It's really isolated geographically, and it's been really hit by poverty, really. There's very few adults in employment, and transport's a real issue. It's not often that the kids get out of that community except to go to perhaps to go in shopping or to go to a tangi. They very rarely go into events in other communities, again, because of cost and so forth. The role has fluctuated hugely over the last few years. There were 6 in 2023 when I started there. There's 24 at the moment. It's been up and down. One of the reasons for that is there's an area school 20 minutes away, and whānau, when things have been not going so well in the school, whānau have moved their children to the area school where there's a bus that, the bus goes down to it, and then brought them back again when things are going well. So there's a bit of sort of community transience going on. There are huge staffing challenges. The acting principal who was in there when I started had significant health issues, but there was nobody else that was available to do the job. There were no relievers in the area, so she wasn't taking any principal release time at all. There was just major challenges. The buildings and the grounds have become really run down. There were 2 marae that contribute to that school, and there were some community tensions between that group, those 2 groups at the time, which were playing out in the school and particularly playing out at board level. Next slide, Fee. Sorry, it's me. So in April 2023, a fantastic principal was appointed to be a teaching principal. It was her first time as a principal. She came in full of enthusiasm. She had so many things she wanted to do. The first challenge she had was that there was no accommodation because one of the families with children at the school were living in the schoolhouse. And for her to be able to move into the schoolhouse meant that the family would have to be put out, and there was nowhere else for them to live. So that was and accommodation is often a factor for rural schools as well. She got all sorts of things happening. But the following year when ERO came in, the ERO review identified significant concerns. Personally, I thought it was very unfair because it didn't recognise how much work she'd done. she had just worked so hard. And her husband, who was a builder, he'd worked free around the school doing all sorts of things. He was always there water blasting and doing things when I got there. And they'd worked really hard to try and make that school look better, and also try and deal with some of the clutter and the mess that was sort of accumulating. The Aero report sort of brought things to a bit of a head, I think, because the board, there was lots of things the board hadn't been doing that they should have been doing. And so the community became quite divided over the direction and the vision for the school and what needed to happen. And in December of 2024, the principal left, citing personal and professional safety issues. And suddenly we were back with the acting principal with the health issues because there was nobody else to pick the school up. In March this year, the board was stood down, and a very, very, very good commissioner has been appointed, and she's been amazing to work with because she worked for years with Aero and before that with Team Solutions. So she has a really good knowledge of rural schools and what a good school looks like. An acting principal started in April, and he's just been appointed permanently to the role. And one of the first issues that I identified when I was sitting down with the commissioner trying to go through, she was trying to get clarity about who did what and who came in, was that there were 6 organisations coming in who were providing learning support in some form to the school. So we had the RTLB, we had an LSC coming in, we had a counsellor coming in from Awhiatu Awhi Mai, Manaaki had somebody coming in from one of the iwi organisations. There was an Oz child, so the ministry special ed advisor was coming in, and the Kahuiako cross-school literacy specialist was coming in. So that school had so many people to deal with, and there was no clear plan about who did what. And so what we came, next slide, Fiona, please. We decided that the best approach to take was that we all got, as many of us as possible, got together in a room and really talked about how we could work together to support the school in a way that didn't put more pressure on the teaching principal, and that supported the staff and the children. So the first mahi tahi hui was held at the school on the 21st of May, and we had quite a few people present. The people that weren't present were really happy to be assigned tasks if that was needed. And we set ourselves, the question we asked ourselves is, what should we do for these children at this particular moment and in this location? And this was a quote that the commissioner brought to the table, and it was a really good starting place to try and get on the same page. At that stage we said we went through and prioritized what was really important for the school, and to get through term 2, and then to start looking ahead at what it could look like in term 3. So it was a shared plan. The senior advisor for the school and the curriculum advisor came along as well, which really helped because they were able to pick up some of the tasks. We started with what the principal and the students needed, and we prioritised those into urgent first, then longer term. We basically used he pikarua because we started with whanaungatanga, building connections. All of us come into the school, none of us ever come in at the same time, but we're all trying to have an impact on the quality of teaching and learning in this school and the well-being of the people attending it. We moved into kohi and we started gathering information. And then when we had some information, some of us used that to make sense of it together and to make a plan. Next slide, please. Sorry, it's me. So I'm not going to talk because we're running out of time, but these were the things that we identified. The priority was gathering reliable assessment data because assessment and reporting had fallen over at the end of the previous year and no reports had gone out. So this was urgent, that some good assessment data was gathered to support the teacher, the principal, teaching principal to get reports out as soon as possible. And the actions we would take were to gather assessment data. And so we looked at what was needed and who was going to do what and who could do what. We set a time frame for it, and that was sort of how we proceeded. With the LSC, myself and the cross-school teacher doing most of the assessment or supporting the teacher aide with limited authority to teach to do some of it. Next slide, Fiona, please. We set up a Google Sheet, and in that Google Sheet, we tried to gather all the basic information, including attendance for the previous year, because we wanted to see whether that was one of the issues that Aero had brought up. So it was one of the things we wanted to track. And then we all put in, as we finished stuff, we all put our data in there. Next slide, please. Then the LSC and I sat down and basically with the teaching principal and analysed the assessment results. And those are we wrote this up into about a 3-page report that the principal could then use to inform what was going to happen from there. So those were the titles we put things under. We ensured that we brought in the Aero review recommendations so that everything aligned. And we also talked at the end about engagement in the assessment process, because one of the things we discovered was that while skill levels and competency levels were really low, the kids were really keen to engage in it. And that's really important, that they hadn't lost their motivation for learning. And I think that's sort of where we got to. Hang on, I'm just going to... Yep, and that's where we've got to. And today, this afternoon, well, later today, Fiona and I are attending the second mahi tahi. And the focus for that one is going to be on what's our progress against the previous, against our previous goals and tasks, and then what's now a priority for the school over the next 10 weeks. So that's it, really. Trying to take a strategic approach to the work we do in a really tough school. A school that's had really tough things to deal with. It's not a tough school, it's just had a really hard journey. Thank you. Sorry, I was rushing at the end because I realised I was running out of time.
Thank you so much, Carol. We worked together and there were still gems in there that I was sort of picking up and going, right, I just need to take that one with me. And I'm really looking forward to getting out there this afternoon too. Yeah,
and Jeff, I've just seen your
beautiful piece of work.
I've just seen your note about poverty, and you're right. I knew when I was using that word, it was like that wasn't the word I wanted. But I wanted to talk about the community having had so many things taken away from them over the last 10, 20 years, so many things that they might have had in the past, and that they,
I knew you were thinking that way, but I thought it's important for us to all have that shared understanding.
Absolutely, because it's again, it's a emotively packed word, and they're a rich community in many ways, but they've certainly been hit by the economic situation.
Hold on, I will just hop back to screen share, I think, and want to urge you to join the group. We will, in the slides, we'll be sharing some information about how you can join the group, but we've got on our RTLB Aotearoa website, we've got a space for groups to connect, and really encourage you, Leonie mentioned it earlier, encourage you to jump on there. It's so that we can support each other, because it is a different space, and that was one of our kind of, particularly when we got to our hui and we started talking about it, we went, there's a there. There's, I remember, and Carol talked about the that emotional isolation. That was often that shoulder to, like, literally to cry on, when you've got rural principals who've got staffing issues that may not feel safe, and having someone they can just, in a safe space, meeting someone kind of on the road in for coffee, that was kind of often the most effective intervention. It's just giving them time to process and talk things through. It's not about solving somebody else's, it's just being there for them and holding space. So I encourage you to join the group. Share the ideas. Let's share our ideas to support each other, spark a bit of a thought, and then to uplift, so reflect on the dynamics in your small communities. And that was just awesome, Kieran. You know, just that, make that point of checking in, touching base. And our next session is 8:30, Thursday, the 18th of September. The registration link will come out. And what we're hoping to do is gather together all of this kōrero, what you've provided in terms of that rich input, what's on top, and then let that inform our next webinar, so our next discussion. And I think that point around wellbeing is an important one to connect with too. So if you're not with our joined our Facebook, we are at 697 whānau. So there might just be a prize for whoever gets onto Facebook as the 700. Keeping that on the kind of quiet, so you're the only ones that know that. So if you're not in our Facebook group, there's the QR. Jump on, and number 700 might just get to pick book from our really awesome list. And as I've said, join the rōpū on our website, and that top RTLB Aotearoa is a link to the site if you aren't on there already. So awesome to see you today. Thank you so much for joining us. I will hand over to Deb, and thank you so much again, Carol.
Ngā mihi nui, just a tautoko your kōrero whi. We always value and appreciate the contributions of our colleagues. Thank you, mihi ana ki a koe, Carol. It was a pleasure listening. And I guess one of my takeaways was thinking about, as if for those of us who are fortunate to sort of facilitate team spaces, what sort of plan do we have in place so that our rural, our RTLB are more equipped, better equipped to go out now that when we know better and how to, they actually have a process to engage with and try to do that kohi, try and be that person to facilitate or initiate that conversation and try and get more on the journey to clarity is what really came about. And like you said, Fee, it's not about solving problems. It's about our journey to clarifying little bits in our practice along the way. Hence is why connecting with somebody else, just sharing the conversation or directing them to a space where they can have a little bit more information, or people who are thinking about that at the moment, take away the thinking and help clarify some things. So mihi ana kia tātou. Be well, be safe, and look after yourselves at this time of the makariri. And those of you who are, experiencing loss at the minute, piki te kaha, piki te ora, kia tātou katoa. Nā runga I tēnā, thank you everybody else for joining us. Thank you the team for your mahi and dedication to this kaupapa and helping each other out. Mihi ana, no reira, me noi tātou. Kia tau te manaakitanga, ki runga ki tēnā o tātou. Kia piki te ora. Kia piki te māramatanga, kia hoki pai atu, kia hoki pai mai, tūturu whakamaua kia tīna, haumi e, hui e, tāe ki e. Settle the care and protection upon each of us. May the health and understanding grow. Return well to others and ourselves. Hold fast to your authenticity. Be firm, join together, gather together and bind as one. Mauri ora kia tātou.